back, guys. Thanks for watching. Today we're going to test the 124 grain plus P Hornady critical duty. Now, I do not think they make the 124 grain in standard pressure. All I could find is the plus P, so that's what we're going to test today. For those of you that don't know, plus P just basically means that there's added pressure in the cartridge, and usually that means more velocity, and I'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. But the gel blocks we're going to use, as always, is my clear Ballistics 20% Ballistics gel blocks. And I do have an older gel block in the front. That's because I'm going to do some barrier tests with this cartridge as well, and I do not want to send a bunch of shrapnel into a brand new gel block. I want to try and preserve these for as long as I can because they're not cheap. But you still can see into the first one enough, so I'll probably use it maybe one or two more times, and then we'll just go ahead and get rid of that one. But I'm going to go ahead and set you guys up on the tripod here, and we will get started. First, what we're going to do is just go ahead and shoot the 124 grain critical duty into the bare gel and see how it does, and then we'll move on to some barrier tests and stuff like that. Alright, so in bare gel it went into our gel block, had a pretty standard temporary wound channel, and continued traveling down and stopped right there. It looks like it expanded pretty nicely and stopped just a couple inches short of leaving our first gel block. Alright, the next test we're going to do is the FBI heavy clothing test. The first layer is a 3.5 ounce cotton t-shirt square. The second layer is a 5 ounce cotton t-shirt square. The third layer is a heavy fleece material, and the fourth layer is a cotton denim square. So I'm going to go ahead and step back and we will see how it does. Alright, so our bullet went in right there, went into the gel block. Looks like it expanded pretty quickly. It's kind of hard to tell with these temporary wound channels because some of this is caused by the energy of the impact of the bullet, but had probably a bigger temporary wound channel than it did in the bare gel. Continued going down, went past the original shot and stopped literally at the very end of that gel block. And you can even see in our second gel block, it kind of sent a little bit of debris in there. Just, you know, maybe one little piece of that red polymer insert that's in these bullets, but definitely expanded pretty nicely. The critical duty is not known for having, you know, huge expansion, but for this bullet, it did expand nicely. Turned around backwards and stopped right at 16 inches in our first gel block. So I really like the result of that FBI heavy clothing test. I'll try and run the footage here of when I did the 135 grain critical duty through that test, and I'm sure because it's a heavier bullet, it went all the way through the gel block and all the way through a water jug that I had behind the gel block as well, and the 124 grain stopped in our first gel block. So depending on what you want, you might prefer the extra penetration of the 135 grain, but I like the 124 grain stopping in our first gel block like that. And keep in mind, these are 20% ballistics gel blocks, so in 10% gel, this would probably go 3 or 4 inches further. Alright, so now we're going to do a couple hard barriers, and the first one we're going to do is a 2x6 piece of wood. I have it about 6 inches away from our first gel block here. And hard barriers is where the critical duty really excels. It's kind of what it was made for. And wood is not as hard as like a car door or a windshield or nothing like that. Bullets make it through wood really easily, but this is the first hard barrier I'm testing this bullet through, so let's see how it does. Alright, so this is how I found our piece of wood. You can see the bullet hole there, and a little bit of shrapnel on our first gel block. Not too bad. But the bullet went in right above the second one that we shot, and you can see there that it did get rid of that red insert that's in the tip of the bullet. Continued going down the gel and left our first gel block and stopped right in the front of our second gel block. So this one stopped probably right at about 17 inches. These are 16-inch gel blocks. And you can see there, we will dig these out after this test, but you can see there that less expansion for sure than the other two. Still expanded a little bit, but definitely not as much as the first two that we shot. Alright guys, so the final test I'm going to do is this piece of steel. This is a really heavy piece of metal, fairly thick. Probably on camera it doesn't look as heavy duty as it is. You can see there that I have shot this before, and you can tell just by how much those bullets bent that metal that it puts up a good fight. It's definitely not just a thin piece of sheet metal, so let's see how it does. Alright, let's see how our critical duty does through the piece of steel. Alright, so here's our piece of steel that the bullet went through. You can see it went just to the left of another bullet hole that I had in there and kind of made one giant hole. That's why I turned it around the way I had it, so that I wouldn't get confused which was which. But it looks like it shed a big piece of that copper jacket that's around the bullet. It's pretty cool. Just left it right there on the piece of wood. And the bullet went in right there on the top. I don't know if you can see, but it has really no temporary wound channel at all. Basically just the size of the bullet. So definitely the smallest temporary wound channel so far. And continued traveling down the gel. It also stopped shorter than any of the other ones that we shot. So still definitely had enough penetration, and it looks like it did expand and flatten out quite a bit more than the other ones as well. So again, keep in mind this is 20% gel, so that's definitely still a lot of penetration for a pistol round. And this one stopped right at about 10¼ inches into our first gel block. Alright guys, here are the 4 bullets that I pulled out of the gel. The one on the left here is the one that we shot into the bare gel, and as you can see it just performed pretty much perfectly and expanded pretty much perfectly. The second one here is the one that we shot through the FBI heavy clothing test, and it is almost identical to the one we shot into bare gel. Both of these had that red piece smashed around the front. I just pulled it off of the first one so that we could see the expansion of that bullet. But the fact that it went through the heavy clothing test and performed pretty much identical to the bare gel is really impressive in my opinion. So both of those did really well. Now the third one here is the one that we shot through the wood, and as you can see it did not really expand or flatten out as much as the first two. It started to expand and open up a little bit over here, but just didn't really open up all the way. It stopped at about 17 inches into the gel, so it did okay there, but just something about that wood, it just didn't really expand like the others did. Now the fourth one here is the one that we shot through the sheet of steel, and it definitely flattened out more than any of the others, and it also expanded pretty well too. I believe that steel is just such a tough barrier that it just kind of flattened that bullet out probably before it even went into the gel, but nonetheless it performed really well considering how tough of a barrier that steel plate is. Well, that's going to do it for me today, guys. I wanted to do a glass test with this one as well, like I did with the 135 grain version, but that was just such a mess to clean up, and I can't just leave, you know, all that glass all over the place out here. It just shattered, and it was just a giant mess and a lot of hassle to pick up. So if you guys would really like to see that, let me know, and maybe I can try and figure it out and lay something down out here to, you know, catch all that. But thanks for suggesting this video, guys. This was a cool video, and you know, like you guys said, there's just not a lot of videos out there on the 124 grain critical duty. So in my opinion, I like it better. I think that I prefer a little bit less penetration than the 135 grain version gives you. I know there's a few of you guys out there who swear by the 135 grain version, and I understand that. You know, if penetration is your main concern, then you can't go wrong with that bullet. But I do like the 124 grain version just a little bit better. I like the way it performed in the gel better, and I'm a big fan of it. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up for me. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.